So, Jen, I understand you are a person something like me who's had a spiritual experience, one or more, correct?
You could say that, yes.
Okay. Well, why don't you say that? Why don't you tell us about one of them anyway?
All right. Well, the one that I told you about, it was shortly after my husband had died. He died when he was only 48, so and very suddenly, and he loved life so much that everybody thought it was a desperate tragedy. He loved me, he loved his children, he loved cycling, and he had a passion for making things out of wood.
Hmm.
And nobody could understand that how he could love all those things and then be taken as he was.
Yes.
And one day, shortly after he'd passed on, I was walking up the garden to his shed, and suddenly, from nowhere, there was this nanosecond of, I don't know what you could call it really, just like a knowing. And it was as if I had been, even though I was standing in my garden, I'd suddenly been shown where he'd gone. And it was such a joyful, exuberant, wonderful, peaceful feeling that I could understand how he'd managed to leave behind everything he'd passionately loved. And in that split second, I understood the meaning of a life hereafter.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
it was that powerful.
It's one of the words you used was that you were shown why he may have done, etc., as though you could see it with your eyes. My experience was I didn't see anything with my eyes, so to speak. It was more like I was transported to a different state. But did you see something, or was it a state? How were you shown this?
I felt it. And I
Uh huh.
felt also as if I was in a shaft of light.
Uh
That's
huh.
the only way I can explain it.
Okay.
And it was a knowing from inside my heart more than seeing something. It was a feeling.
And I like the idea of knowing. I've heard that with many other people before. I would use that phrase myself. I don't use it very often, but it's like, well, I'm going to give you my view, but we need yours, okay, for comparison. It was like all these other things we learn about, science and geography and English, and we learn in school, all that stuff. I mean, that's one sort of knowing, if you will, but that's nothing like this knowing. This other knowing is a sort
Yes.
of a like everything else isn't really real. This is the real. That's
Yes.
that's that's how I say it. But go ahead.
Yes, that's true. It was the same sort of feeling I had when I knew I was going to marry Simon,
Uh huh.
even though I hadn't met him before. And the first meeting we did have, I just knew I had to marry this man. There was
Yeah.
no two ways about it,
Okay.
even though we hadn't spoken. That
All right.
sort of knowing.
All right. Now you said you had other experiences. Why don't you name another?
All right, here's another one. I'm a teacher and I worked for a support service and it was going to be closed down. And everybody was running around looking for a different job. And there'd been talk of a special reading system that had come from New Zealand, and it was called Reading Recovery, and it was to teach children, the very poorest children, how to read. And I thought, I'm going to do that. And I knew I was going to do it. And sitting in amongst all this running around of people looking for a job, and I hadn't got a job. In 2 or 3 weeks, I would have no job. And I just knew that somehow I was going to be a reading recovery teacher.
Uh huh.
And I got to the end of my contract and no job. And then the very last day, somebody said to me, I'd like you to go and see this head teacher and he might have a job for you. And he talked about this and he said, can you do that? I said, yeah, I can do that. And then at the end of it, he said, and also, after you've been here a term, we're going to be doing reading recovery and you're going to be the teacher. And I didn't even have to plan it or
Okay.
apply for it. It just happened.
That,
So I just knew.
okay. That's a something about knowing, if you will. That's
Yeah.
also that's also an example of what I hear a lot of times is that if you just sort of let go of things, they get planned for you. It's
Yes.
sort of like it's a spiritual plan. It's hard to put some real concrete scientific facts about that. It's just, but again, it's sort of a knowing, like it unfolded for you, and that's how it should have been.
Yes.
And there it was. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have another spiritual experience where you had not only knowing, but this sense of where Simon went?
Sense of where Simon went. I suppose, sort of, when I was about 15, and I used to go to a youth group at Sunday school, and we had some visiting deaconesses, and we were standing just in a semicircle and praying, and I was overcome, that's the only word I can say, overcome with this feeling that I was being called to do something in that sense.
Yes.
And it was so powerful. My friend said next to me, she said, "Are you all right?" So something must have happened to me that I knew from what the deaconesses had been saying that this was something I had to do.
Oh.
It was that sort of link, if you like, with an unknown energy, perhaps.
And was there a sort of a light or a loving state involved with it, or was it just a big nudge that you couldn't ignore?
It was like being folded up in a big golden light, as if I was being pulled into something.
Yeah, like I didn't experience it, but it's like
Yeah.
pull you into this thing that's really important for you to do.
Yes, and I had no knowledge of it before, or no feeling of it before, but it was just something I knew. I just knew it's what I had to do.
There was a series of movies in the United States many, many years ago called The Godfather. Did you ever see that movie?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's actually a crime movie about the mafia, but Marlon Brando was in it, and one of his favorite sayings was when he wanted somebody to do something they may resist, he would say, "We will make them an offer they can't refuse." Okay. And that came up when you were saying this. Now, this is not a mafia kind of punishment type thing, but was it like an offer you can't refuse?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. You'd think, why would I choose anything else?
Yes. Okay. Fascinating. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Jan, thanks so much for sharing that. We're going to be having other people see this and all that, and it's going to be very helpful. So nice for you to join our little parade here.
It was a pleasure to meet with you, Gary. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jan.